Hello, this is Bad Vibes. Today's video is about stalkers. Some of the stories are about being stalked for quite a while, and others are being stalked like prey and followed. Hit that like button if you enjoy, and sit back and relax. I live in South Georgia, so things over here can be really shady. I go to this Walmart all the time, and I've never had any problems with it whatsoever. I'm a 21-year-old male, so it's kind of weird that I was followed anyways, but here we go. I went shopping for groceries, doing my usual thing. It was around 8:30 p.m. by the time I got done checking out. As I was walking out of the store, I noticed an older gentleman staring at me, all creepy-like. I just brushed it off until I noticed he was out in the parking lot, staring as I was putting my groceries in the car. I decided to kind of pick up the pace. I can defend myself. I'm a pretty muscular guy, but I don't like violence that much. Anyway, I get in my car, start to drive away, and thought that was that. I get about a mile down the road when this black pickup starts right in my bumper. I slowed down and went off the road to let him pass, but he didn't. He kept pace. I finally brake checked him and he passes, but as he was doing that, I noticed it was the same old man. When he passed me, he brake checked me hard and tried to get me to stop my car. This went on for about 10 minutes until I got very aggravated and passed him and sped off. I finally get home, go inside and start to chill out when my Ring camera went off. I looked at the video from my phone and this dude was on my porch. I called the cops, but by the time they got there, he was gone, so there was nothing that they could do. This happened last night, so I'm kinda creeped out about this experience and thought I would share. Quick backstory. I've had a stalker for about 4 years. He was never aggressive or sent me proper threats. So, stubborn as I am, I did my best to ignore him and not give him the satisfaction of showing him any fear. To be honest, after a while, I wasn't scared anymore, since he almost never came close to me. I know being stalked can affect people severely, even in a case like mine, and that's totally valid, but I guess I just got lucky and was never really psychologically affected by it. His stalking behavior mostly just sending me letters and gifts, such as photos of my own apartment building from the outside, things he dug up outside my trash can, and so on. I called the police many times, but they weren't really able to catch him or identify him, or really try, to be honest. About 3 weeks ago, I discovered this German version of the subreddit I Am A, and thought that people might want to know about what it's like to have a stalker. Since I barely used any social media outside of Reddit and had no personally identifying information on here, I didn't think he would ever see it. One person even asked, "Does he know that you're putting him on blast on Reddit?" And I answered, maybe. Maybe it would make him angry, and maybe he would be turned on. Don't know, don't care. Well, I know the real answer now. He did see it, and he did not like it. Like I said, he never gets aggressive, never came too close to me. The closest I know of was when he sent me a picture of myself while unlocking my apartment door, taken from the corner of the steps above. Sorry if that makes no sense. I don't know how else to explain it. But I consider myself a pretty vigilant person, and I'm thinking that he might have had a hidden camera there instead of actually being there to take the photo himself. I think I would have noticed him if he did. I don't know how he got wind of my post, but he did. The next week was quiet, no letters, and I didn't see him anywhere. Then he left me letters with printed out questions and my answers from the AMA post. He also left me a long hateful letter towards my boyfriend about an issue I posted on a German version of Am I the Asshole subreddit. His letters were never hateful like that before, though he never seemed happy with my boyfriend. He wrote about how I should share the spotlight with him since I got so much attention thanks to him. A few days later I got a gift, but this time he didn't leave it in my mailbox or my car like he usually did. No, this time he left it inside my apartment building, right in front of my door. I didn't take it inside my apartment, but opened it outside. It was a pretty big box. which was also unusual, and it was taped shut. As I'm typing it, I realized that it wasn't a good idea at all, and it could have ended badly for me, but luckily he didn't send me a bomb or anything. He did, however, send me several zip ties, a roll of tape, the kind you tape off walls when painting, nothing you would use to restrain someone, a TV remote with most of the buttons picked off, a pack of band-aids with a few used, and a framed picture of me. I could tell that the picture was taken a few days ago, and my boyfriend was next to me, but cut out of the photo. The frame was shattered, and the package was full of glass shards, clearly more than just what could have fallen out of the frame. And they were also intentionally put inside a crumpled newspaper that was stuffed all in there to keep everything in place. I called the police right away and gave it to them. They were more concerned this time. Finally, thanks. And told me that they would send patrol cars more frequently. He didn't show up or leave any letters or gifts for about a week and a half, but 8 days ago it started again. I found letters in my mailbox where he wrote about how he wasted his time on me, how I hadn't been appreciating his effort, how he was wrong about me being special. 5 days ago I left my apartment in the morning and heard a crunch sound as I stepped out of my doormat. He put a broken glass under it in the night. I went off to work because I was in a hurry and was just going to make my boyfriend call the police. But then I found that my car had also been vandalized. The sides were scratched, lights smashed, and the windshield had a phrase painted on it. "It's time soon, Miss Jones." I went back inside and called the cops myself. They found the same phrase on a note under my doormat. This time they really took me seriously, which might have been because I was just so pissed at that point, which I made very clear. If for some reason you're like me and just too stubborn to be afraid of a stalker like mine, then all of this, the letters, gifts, photos, even the damn glass under my doormat, are just really annoying and inconvenient. But my car was useless to me now, and the threat written scared even me. I did, however, have a dash cam in my car, and it caught everything. The police took the footage as evidence, even though the dash cam footage wasn't of high quality, and I had given them photos of him before that were just as good, but they always said it wasn't enough. They told me that they'd look into it further and promised to send more patrol cars again. Then it was quiet for 2 more days, until 2 days ago. Someone rang my doorbell just after 4 a.m. My boyfriend and I got up, but we were both hesitant. But I saw blue lights outside, and just as I got up, I heard them shouting, "This is the police, please open the door." They told us that they were called by one of my downstairs neighbors who came home from his night shift about an hour earlier. He heard someone else enter the building after them, before the door fully shut. Side note, my neighbors all know about my situation, and I've asked them to make sure they don't let any strangers into the building. This neighbor then went to his own apartment and looked through the peephole. We have motion activated lights in the stairway, so he waited to see if they turned back on. They did. Then he said he saw a middle-aged man walk upstairs. Above this neighbor are only me and my boyfriend and a single mom with 3 kids who probably won't get any visitors at 3 a.m., so he called the police. They came and found my stalker about 1/2 floor above me on the stairs. He should have been able to see the cop cars since there's little windows up there and they had their lights on, but he either missed them or wanted to get caught. They found a pocket knife on him and he confessed to being my stalker right away. He's finally caught. They got him. It took 4 years, a provocative Reddit post, and one very vigilant and caring neighbor, but he's finally done, for now at least. He's facing several charges, and I've collected every single piece of evidence over the past 4 years. I don't know what kind of outcome I can expect, but for now, I finally got some peace. When I was 17, I moved to college 2 hours away from my home and took residence in a dorm on campus. Dorms were not run through the school, but through a management company. There were a lot of safety problems in the dorms. As a result of this, assaults, ODs, drugs, shootings right outside, etc. I'm a 100-pound female, so I always watched out for serious situations around me. Everything was great. I had some awful roommates, but I was mostly left alone. One day in September, I was leaving for class early in the morning when I spotted a condom taped to my name tag on my door. It had a note that said, "Call me, XOXO," with some random phone number. I told the RAs and nothing came of it. I just thought it was some random prank pulled by one of the guys on the floor. Things went south with my roommates, mostly because of my night terrors scaring them, even though I warned them before we agreed to be roommates. So I moved into a new 2-bedroom dorm with my new roommate, Jay. We each had our own room. After a week of living there, I started noticing things were appearing in the living room while we were sleeping. I asked Jay about it, and she vehemently denied it was her. One day we noticed the lock on the front door did not lock properly. If you pulled on the lock and twisted the handle at the same time, the door would come open. Around the same time, I started getting these Snapchats of inappropriate things, vague threats and offers for great sex. I would get ones that would say things like, "You look great today," with the exact article of clothing I was wearing. I filed reports to the dorm to get the lock fixed, but it took 4 months, 8 complaints, threat of legal action, and my friend D yelling at them to get any action. We got our door fixed, but the presence still appeared outside of the door with notes for me. I was still receiving Snapchats, but I moved out of the dorms into an apartment with my then boyfriend. The Snapchats continued, then I started getting calls at work. I worked for the dean's office of my college, and I was in charge of answering phones. Every day, I would get 3 or more calls from randomly generated numbers. I discovered it was through apps like Viber and Skype after I reported to the police and they investigated. Anyway, I would answer the phone. "Dean's office, this is, how can I help you?" I would hear heavy breathing for a second, then they would hang up. At first, I thought it was just some 12-year-old kid pranking our office until my coworker got a call. She answered with her name, and the person on the line asked if they could speak with me. Thinking it was one of the deans I had been working with, she forwarded it to my phone. I answered it, and I received the same heavy breathing and then a hang up. I reported it to my boss. She did nothing, but one of the deans overheard the conversation and reported it to Title IX. Oh boy, talking to them was a mistake. After meeting with them, the threat started getting worse, and this person even found my new apartment. One day in December, I was doing some dog sitting for 2 wonderful dogs who hated other dogs and would bark at them on sight. It was around 11 p.m. and I decided to take them out before bed. We get outside. To the right of me is a bunch of thick trees that are hard to see through. I start to take the girls to the grass on the left. They start growling and barking at something in the trees. Thinking it was another dog, I tried to pull them away, but they would not budge. I glance over and out of the trees comes this tall man. But the weird thing is, he's wearing a Michael Myers-like mask. He starts rushing towards me. The dogs get between me and him. He stops. I run up the stairs that are behind me into the apartment as he's disappearing into the trees again. Stupidly, I did not call the police, but I see him one more time before I move to my new apartment. Things are quiet for a while. My boyfriend and I break up, and I spend the first few days in my new apartment alone. Come to find out that the window can be accessed from the ground doesn't lock. One morning I wake up. Everything seems normal. I check the mirror to do my hair for work. I have a bald spot. My head was shaved in the middle of the night. I find my hair tied up in knots in an envelope. I immediately call the police. They do an investigation. Find out the window was broken, but can't find anything to figure out who it was that came into my apartment. They asked me to compile a list of everything that went missing, and the only thing that was gone other than my hair was about 3 pairs of my dirty underwear. An investigation finds no one. I have since moved. I no longer answer phone calls at my work, and I keep bear spray next to my bed at all times. Update. A couple weeks ago, I moved apartments. I decided not to put my name on the lease and instead have my cosigner, family member, be the one on the lease. They agreed to it because of the safety issue that I had been having. I moved, and despite my best efforts, I was not able to get a roommate that I knew. My only other option was to find some random person on Craigslist. Of course, I was not about to get an apartment with a complete stranger. Since I moved into my apartment, I've had one night without dogs in my apartment. I've been very busy with pet sitting and try to cater mostly to dogs because I love them and it helps make me feel safe. Thankfully last night, I had 2 big dogs at my apartment. Last night, I fell asleep on my couch and was woken up at 2 a.m. by growling and panic barking. I shot up and saw a man standing in my front doorway. Without thinking, I scream, "What the hell?" And he turns and runs out the open door. I jump up and lock the door, which was useless, and call the police. They arrive and discover that the lock had been broken. They take my statement and do their usual canvassing of the area. They find nothing and advise me to call maintenance on an emergency basis. My lock is fixed, but by this time, it's time for me to go to work. I go out to my car and there's flowers all around my car, and only my car. They were not there last night. I have photos, but they got a little crushed by the rain last night. I have a few options, but I'm not going to go into detail because honestly, I'm a little paranoid about sharing where I might go and what I might do. In the meantime, I'm getting a chain lock on the door and an extra deadbolt. I'm going to have someone stay with me for as long as they can, and I'm only sleeping in my room where I can lock the door. So a few strange things have happened to me lately. For context, my husband is a truck driver and is gone 2 to 3 weeks at a time. We live out in the woods, nearest neighbor about 2 miles away. It's not a place to find easily unless you know exactly what you're looking for. I work from home and am very private about my life on social media and do not do anything unnecessary that would be easy to find me. I'm a very private person. I barely use Facebook except to keep in contact with a few family members, so I found it odd that around a week ago, a clearly made up name for a Facebook user messaged me and knew my real name. He gives me details of what my home looks like, my town, and where I work. Odd, but I ignored. The next day, the same user messages me asking very personal questions and stating disturbing things that they would like to do. How easy it would be to get inside my home. I show my husband. Long story short, we find it weird, but decide to block this account. As last week passes, I have received calls and text messages, assumedly from the same account. Every time I answer the phone, it was just deep breathing and then hanging up. Eventually, it freaked me out to the point that I've put up trail cams and security cameras on my porch and all around the property. Well, this morning I went to town for some errands, and my Ring doorbell goes off, and there's a man wearing a black hoodie, hiding most of his face, standing on my back porch. He's banging on the door, increasingly louder, and yelling my name. This went on for at least 15 minutes, until he just stopped and walked off into the woods. I called police who checked my house and around the property, but didn't find anyone. I even gave them pictures caught on my trail cams. Basically, nothing can be done unless I'm in immediate danger or he gets inside. They suggest I get a guard dog. My husband believes it's just a neighbor or a friend pulling a prank on me, but this isn't anything that anyone I know would pull. The questions and statements made about what this person wanted to do is incredibly creepy. My husband and family think I'm overreacting, but to see someone just standing in my backyard super late at night when I live far out isn't normal. I'm freaking out and don't know what to do. Update. I woke up this morning, checked the cameras. No weirdos on the porch this time, but an eerie feeling all around and a dead bird right off my porch. There was blood, so I'm really hoping it was an animal attack. I'm clearly paranoid. I spoke on the phone with my husband and he sent screenshots of the messages he's received. I unblocked the person and tried to call the number to see what would happen, and it says inactive. Reverse search of the number says it's a texting app randomly given to a person, which is super creepy. Few things. 1. I'm having my younger brother come and stay with me for about a week. He will be doing his college classes from home here. I know it sounds silly, but I cannot afford to stay in a hotel or something at the moment. He's the only family member I keep in touch with on a regular basis. My relationship with the rest of my family is strained due to childhood trauma issues. And lastly, he is ridiculously big and strong for a 20-year-old kid and is fearless. I just feel better having someone here since I can't exactly stay somewhere else. 2. I plan on getting a dog later in the week, hopefully being a bit of an alarm and guard dog. I've also ordered better cameras to set up. As someone mentioned, yes, my brakes were cut about a month ago. I'm really suspicious now as my cameras didn't pick up anyone. My neighbors live on the main road just before you turn down the back road all the way to get here, and they said they haven't seen anything weird, but that they will keep an eye out now. 4. I've read all your comments and a lot were suspicious of my husband. I want to let you know, I hear you. I'm not ignoring the signs. To be frank with strangers on the internet, I'm worried myself. I love him to death and I'm not about to go on the crazy train of accusing my husband of attempting to murder me or even anything harmless or as a prank. However, I'm a very suspicious person who doesn't trust anyone 100%. There haven't really been signs of anything weird on his end that I've noticed yet, and I have confirmed he has been all over the road like he said, but I'm just keeping the idea in my head just in case. One last thing, this is in America, and I've been considering buying a handgun and getting a concealed carry permit. I grew up on a farm, I know how to shoot. I just prefer not to mess around with them due to extremely traumatic events. If anything more happens, I think I'm gonna do it. Last update. I'm still alive and have a bit of an update. I just want to preface this with something real quick. First, I've seen all the comments and I've gotten numerous messages. And while I appreciate your concern and tips, I'd like to say something. I'm not a young person or someone looking for attention. I can assure you all that I am of sound body and mind, and am not imagining things. I do not struggle with mental illness, although I understand and hope for the best for anyone who does. So for an update, well, the police took my cameras and have been holding them as evidence. At least that's what they told me. Yes, there were pictures caught. My younger brother in college stayed with me for about a week, and we had thought things had calmed down, having a large male in the house. But a few nights into him staying, we both woke up in the middle of the night to banging on the front door. I checked the security cameras through the app on my phone. There's some creepy guy standing there, hood pulled down low, so we were unable to see his face. My brother yelled that he was calling the police and the man just said, "Okay," and walked off. I have no idea where to, just into the woods. When I called the police, we explained everything again. They didn't seem to take me very seriously. Needless to say, neither of us slept well after that. The rest of the week was quiet, and I was terrified for him to go back to school, but my husband is coming home for about 2 weeks, so I felt a little bit better. Things seemed to have calmed down the first week he was home, and I thought whoever was playing a sick joke was finished. But this past weekend we had a few of my husband's friends over, celebrating a birthday, and we had a lot of drinks, so friends were invited to stay the night. Sunday morning we all woke up with a hangover and planned to go in town for breakfast. When we stepped on the front porch, there was a roll of duct tape and a screwdriver that we did not own laying on the ground. We checked the cameras again and there's a few times that you can make out a guy's face pacing the porch and peeking in the front window. So we all drove straight into town and showed the police. This time they came and checked all over the property line in the woods. Haven't been able to find anything yet, but are hopeful to find out who this creep is through what is on the cameras. My husband has been trying to console me, pointing out the possibility that he may be someone mentally ill or something, and not with bad intentions, but it's frightening regardless. On top of it all, my friend who lives in town and my neighbor at the beginning of the road have both apparently reported seeing someone matching the description of our troublemaker outside a large, white, windowless van at my friend's place of work. He's been seen driving past our house late at night and apparently following her home several times recently. My neighbor had said something along the lines that the man stopped at her house to ask about the neighbor up there, my house being the only one. There's been a lot of reports of sightings of a van similar in the area surrounding my small town about trafficking schemes, and it very much puts me on edge. I'm not sure if this is someone with a mental illness, someone involved in human trafficking, someone just pulling a sick joke or what, but I'm terrified and sick at the thought of being home any longer. My husband had to be on the road again this week, and I've decided to stay somewhere else, away from my town, and have not told anyone. I don't have family or many friends, and at this rate, I don't know if I would trust anyone to know anything right now anyway. But with no one possibly knowing my location to tell my friends, husband, or the like, we'll see what happens. I know I may sound crazy to some. Some have continued to say I'm making things up, but at what cost? I have a private happy life. I gain nothing from this. I'm just living in fear and hope it will all go back to normal one day, as I'm beginning to regret moving into a small town. This literally happened about an hour ago. I was coming home from school and ended up being behind a truck at a light that I turn at. We both turned and he ended up on the outside lane, while I was on the inside lane. I was jamming out when from the corner of my eye I noticed the truck speeding up. I ignored it at first and just kept driving, but eventually I glanced and there's this guy that was probably in his 30s and he was motioning me to roll down my passenger side window. I shook my head and looked away, speeding up again. He kept pace with me and was gesturing for me to call him, and I tried my best to ignore him. I slowed down because I had to turn onto my street. I now realized I should have kept driving. He kept going straight, putting his hands out the window to tell me to pull over at the store that's in front of the street I live on. He passes the store and kept driving, so I just turned down my street, parked at my house, and started to get my stuff out. I looked up when I got out and saw the truck coming down the street, and I froze. He parked in the middle of the street, got out and came around, telling me I'm so beautiful and he needed my number. I politely declined, and he stepped closer, taking out his wallet and handed me a card. I again said no thank you and tried to give it back to him, but he backed away and said to call him, and then again that I was beautiful and that he hoped I wasn't married. Once he got back into his truck and drove away, I went inside and sat down because I didn't know what else to do. It was so weird and freaked me out because he saw my house. Just had to share my story on here because this encounter has been creeping me out since it happened. Some info. I'm a female 26 and 6 months pregnant, so I have a pretty obvious pregnancy belly. I was on my way to work and noticed this guy, probably in his 30s or 40s, staring me down. It made me a bit uncomfortable, but I just tried to turn around and ignore it. Then when I got off the bus, I noticed that he got off too and walked behind me, still staring me down. I thought it was very odd, but still just ignored it. I work in a clothing store in a big shopping center, so I thought that it wasn't too odd that he kept following me. I went into the grocery store to buy some snacks to bring to work and noticed that he was still behind me. Since I'm pregnant, I got weird cravings, so I went to grab some oranges. Then I noticed he was still following me into the fruit section, and he also started grabbing oranges. I thought, okay. Then I went to get myself this muffin that I had been craving, and he walks behind me and grabs the same muffin. At this point, I'm starting to freak out because I've been sensing that something is off from the start, but now I feel like it's confirmed. Just to check if he was actually getting the same stuff, I went to grab an iced coffee. He also starts to grab the same coffee. I put it back and grabbed myself a chocolate milk instead. He stared at me, and it looked as if he was confused if he should do the same. Then I ran to the cashier to pay so I could run out of the store before he could follow. While I was paying, I noticed that he was standing behind me again. I ran to my store and hid in the back room to see if he followed. We have see-through windows that we can look out, but no one can look in because of shoplifters, etc. I saw him coming towards the store, staring and looking for me. He stood outside for a while, obviously searching with his eyes before walking off. I sat there getting ready to go outside to start my shift when I noticed he had came back, still searching and looking for me. He did this about 10 times during my shift. What on earth did he want? Even my coworker got so creeped out that she wanted to cry and hold me and told me that he must have a pregnancy kink or something. I'm not sure what it could be. This happened last month. The area I go to the gym in has its good parts and bad. I'm in the good part, but over the last month, now I'm not so sure. I will also say that the area I'm in at the moment, we have had issues with a guy who lives around the gym who likes to tailgate women and chase them in his car. He seems to only do this when they're alone in the car. So basically, I had this guy follow me when I was walking home at night. My own fault, but as someone who has volunteered at the AOD center, nothing really phases me. I'm rarely scared. So there I am walking home. As I'm walking home, or at least around the corner from the gym, some guy in his 50s or 60s starts following me. So I go a different route. I lose him. I came back to the gym a few days later, this time much earlier. The guy is back, wandering around aimlessly, drunk, near the gym buying pizza next door. I'm thinking, shit, okay. So he then afterwards decides to start looking into people's cars. I am thinking, this guy might want to break into the cars. I am with a friend at the time and notice that he is looking in his car. I warn him and he leaves the gym and goes to his car. He then drives home and I notice he isn't wanting to break into people's cars, but instead something else. By that point, I'm thinking he wants to look for my car, even though I walk to the gym. I am on an elliptical machine and feel safe in the gym, even though he's outside, because no one can come to the gym unless you're a member. Otherwise the alarm goes off if you try to open the door. To get inside my gym, you need a key card. I also had other people around me, so I wasn't alone in the gym. So lo and behold, this guy looks at me through the glass window. I am facing the window. He waves at me and writes down his name and number on a piece of paper and shoves it against the window I'm directly facing. I shake my head going no, and he leaves. I am thinking that this guy originally came from the pub nearby, as we do have a habit of dealing with drunk people from that pub. Doesn't help that there's a little bottle shop nearby, as well as the pizza place I mentioned before. I swear, my best friend lives in that suburb. He keeps telling me how it's changing due to the number of halfway houses nearby. So I'm 35, non-binary. When this happened, I was 16. I was on my Duke of Edinburgh Silver Award expedition. It's sort of a citizenship thing for young teens and adults, comes in gold, silver, and bronze levels, and involves going on expeditions in groups of 4 to 7. We were hiking and planning to cover about 60 kilometers in 3 days to meet their requirements. You have to avoid roads as much as possible and navigate by map and compass, carrying literally everything you need. Anyway, day 2 of the hike and we've been going most of the day. We're heading down what I think is a bridle path towards a road, which we need to walk along for 100 meters or so to link up with another footpath so we can keep going cross country. We get to a pond that isn't marked on the map, but no problem. It's borderline for the size that you would expect to see marked. Then as we go a bit further, we realize there's a crossroad with 2 paths meeting, and the second path definitely should have been marked and isn't. Much debate begins. We've been standing there for about 5 minutes going over the map and trying to figure out where we were when we hear an engine coming closer. It was weird given that you're not supposed to drive on the bridle path, but we see this little van coming towards us and move back off the path because it's hard to tell someone off for driving on the bridle path after they've ran over you. The van goes a little past us, then stops and reverses. A middle-aged bloke leans out and asks if we're okay. We say yes, but ask if he can tell us the way to the road. We figured even if we're taking the wrong path, the roads are far enough between that it should still be on the right road and we could reorient from there and get back on track. Then it gets weird. He points to the path we came down. Yes, you just go down there past my pond. It's 10 minutes. Tell you what, why don't I give you a lift? We tell him no, that it's not allowed, but he gets out and opens his back of his van. It's carpeted and has what looks like a camera and light equipment, which he starts moving about, telling us to get in. We refuse again, explaining that we would be breaking the rules. Eventually he gives up and closes the van and gets in front and leaves by going down the branch we had came from, the one that he told us led to the road but we knew didn't, which was not the branch we had been going down before he reversed to speak to us. As soon as he was out of sight, it took us about 5 nanoseconds to decide that we were definitely not going either of the ways he seemed interested in going down. We decided to go back to the branch that he had come from, reasoning he couldn't have been running around back paths forever. And if he did come back looking for us, he would be less likely to go the way he came from. We reached the road in less than 10 minutes. Single fucking creepiest experience of my teen years. We literally walked along the road behind a hedgerow, so it would be harder for him to see us from the road for a mile until we found a phone box, called our expedition leader, and got him to pick us up. We heard the guy's engine 3 more times and dropped to the ground behind the hedgerow every time, scared that it was the guy looking for us. I think we all ended up in tears in the back of the minibus once the adrenaline wore off. One day, my best friend and I were taking the shortcut to our house. It goes past a few houses and then to a small area of woods, crossing a 2-foot wide creek. This particular day, I was wearing one of those jackets that had the earbuds as a string, a must-have item for a 5th grader in 2010. As I was passing one of the houses, a big dog came running out of it, jumping on us and obviously wanting to play and be petted. The owner of the house comes out. I noticed right away that he was acting fidgety and nervous, saying stuff about the dog like, "Oh, it's okay, they're nice, don't worry." We made small talk with him about the dogs for a few minutes and turned around to leave. About a minute or so later, we arrived at the small creek when we noticed one of the rubber earbuds that was on my jacket was gone, and I insisted we go back to look for it. The guy came back out and offered to help us. He asked us what the material was that it was made out of, and I said it was made out of rubber. We made small talk again. I think about the jacket and how cool it was. Anyway, he said he was going to be right back with his metal detector. He walked away towards his shed, and I said to my friend, "Why does he need a metal detector? The earbud is made out of rubber." Next thing you know, he's coming back with, I shit you not, a rifle, and he's literally running towards us. When I'm telling you we ran. When we got to safety past the creek and near her house, I was telling her that we needed to call 911. She insisted that we not do that because her parents would be mad at her. I explained to her with urgency why it was important we call the cops, but she refused and I couldn't force her. I didn't call because I didn't want to do it alone. Plus, it would have been my first time calling them. I can't remember if I told my parents that night, but when I told them, they gaslit me and said I was crazy and overreacting and that I didn't really see that. I still think about this damn near every day and it haunts me. My second encounter, again in 5th grade, taking place after the first story, but I'm not sure how long after. The friend from the previous story lived near a cemetery about a 5-minute walk from her house. It was a big cemetery and we liked to walk around it a lot. Plus, being the cemetery was a shortcut through the woods to a big park, which was coincidentally right next to our school. This day we were also with another good friend of ours. We were just walking around the cemetery this day when all of a sudden a blue truck pulls up next to us in the road next to where we were walking, about 10 feet away or so. I could see that 2 guys were in it, literally just staring at us. And again, I just got this weird feeling, the same I got from the first guy. This is hard to explain, but right before the shortcut in the woods is a fence with a cutout that leads to a grass field and a hill that eventually leads into the neighborhood where my other friend lived. The hill was really a bunch of dead grass, weeds, sticks, cattails, etc. Anyway, I told my friend I had a bad feeling about these guys, that they were just staring at us, quite literally slowly following us with the truck. We booked it through the grass fields and up that hill. I had all sorts of cuts and gashes from all the shit we were running through. When we got to the top of the hill, we turned around, and the truck was parked at the top of the hill on the other side, with both men outside of it holding guns and rifles. I truly believe they were coming after us, and they were visibly mad that we got away from them. I know that they were after us, because they had driven through a cutout in the fence. We ran to my friend's house, noticed her parents, who truly didn't seem that worried, but they drove my other friend and I home. I don't even remember if I told my parents about it this time, since they gaslit me when I told them about the other time. I can't shake the fact that this shit really happened when I was in 5th grade, 10 and 11 years old. I also can't believe how lightly my parents took the situation. I'm honestly traumatized about what happened, and I think about it a lot. I just needed to tell people what happened, but I have trouble getting my thoughts into words. I'm a 17-year-old female. I worked at a small amusement park in my hometown for a few months as a summer job. I noticed there was a regular who was an old white man who wore Native American wolf shirts and jeans. He would come to the park every single day. Dude was devoted to the park. I made the mistake the day I socialized with him because my coworker was talking with him, so I joined in on the conversation, asking why he comes in every day. He claimed he liked the atmosphere. After that, every single day he would talk to me, and I didn't really notice a problem until he started asking out-of-pocket questions like what my age was, am I old enough to vote, who I'm voting for, what time do I get out of work. So I lied and told him that I'm working late. A security guard approached me at the park after he left and asked me to write a statement about him. Anyways, after I told a few coworkers about what happened, they told me that he takes pictures of young girls and usually stops and stares where the other girls are working for a while. Security told me that he'd be spoken to in the morning. The next day came and I was kind of nervous from yesterday, but I did my job normally and I caught the motherfucker staring at me. He noticed I saw him and came up to talk to me again, but I hid behind the counter and tried to radio my boss, who was unavailable. So I had to walk to find him, and another incident happened again after that. Literally 5 minutes after the park closed, he was staring at me yet again with no shame to his game. I found out that my assistant manager found him following her to the volleyball game after work, and she's pretty young. I was told she was a minor at the time. Long story short, it took many times to get him banned, and my male boss kinda downplayed the situation. I had to be escorted by security to my car many times because of this dude, and I couldn't even have my own pepper spray on me, so I was basically defenseless. Security told me that they're gonna have a hard time banning him since he's a regular. Last night I went to an auto parts store because my car took a shit. Thank God it was my weekend. I saw the price for the part and had to come back to get it after getting the funds. When I went back and picked up the part I needed, it was around 9:30 p.m., so it was dark out. I was paying for my things and an employee from another store had a company shirt on, was saying bye to the cashier helping me. The cashier said, "Thanks for coming by," and the guy left. After some small talk with the cashier, I paid for my part and dip out. I headed to my parked car outside the door, and the other employee said something that I can't recall. He asked for my name. I gave him a shortened version. I looked at his name tag, said his name, and shook his hand because he was going in for the shake. He said I was really cute. I told him I appreciate that, and we got into our cars. They were parked right next to each other, with only one spot in between. He started backing out while I was looking behind me before doing the same. I looked to the right, clear, then the left, and saw the dude looking over his shoulder, breaking his neck staring at me. I was surprised and uncomfortable, so I snapped my head back and acted like I had to look to the right again. He then pulled out of the lot, and I pulled out and was behind him. He didn't put on his blinker on the turn, but when he pulled out to the main road, he put his hazards on and stopped on the right side of the road. I thought, is this motherfucker gonna follow me right now? I take note of what the car looked like, color, type of car, distinct sticker on the bumper, just in case. I pull out onto the street, past him, and checked my rearview mirror. He was still there with his hazards, so I was like, nah, I'm just being paranoid. Then he starts driving. He was quite a ways behind me, but eventually came closer. Still didn't think too much. He drives past me on the passenger side. It was a 2-lane road, and I keep my eyes forward because I'm not looking after that dude after the weird shit he did in the parking lot. Thankfully, this was right before the light where the 2 lanes merged into one, and he passed me and got in front. I was still behind him, but for safety purposes, I turned right on the next light to get on a different road in the opposite direction of home. Didn't want him to know the general location of my home because I'm outside all the time. Mind you, the auto parts store is like 7 minutes from my house. As I make the right, this dude puts his emergency lights on again and pulls onto the side of the road. There wasn't a parking lot for him to turn and follow me, thank God. But I kept driving, checking my rear view, seeing if he'll pop up, and thank God he didn't. I was afraid that he would drive across the main road to get to my house, but thankfully not. Been keeping my eye out for his car and him ever since. Told my boyfriend about it and described the car just in case. Hopefully I don't see this guy around. Thankfully I was using a family member's car who lives about 15 minutes away, so he doesn't know what my personal car looks like. When I was younger, around 11 or 12, I almost got kidnapped. I was out with my mates during the day. School was canceled as it was heavily snowing the night before. The friend I was with lived only about a 15 to 20 minute walk from my house in an open area. I walked down an alley close to my home, as I always did. There's lots of houses around, and it was broad daylight, so I thought it would be safe. I don't know why, but when I was walking down the alleyway, I got a sudden urge to turn around. When I did, I saw a bald man with a gray scruffy beard, tan, with blue eyes and a white t-shirt and jeans on, and he looked at me in his late 40s, early 50s. He was sprinting full speed at me with the scariest look on his face I had ever seen. I could still remember his face to this day if I was ever to see him again. Anyway, without hesitation, I sprinted literally for my life towards the end of the alleyway until I got home and didn't turn back once. Luckily, I was pretty quick for my age and had the appropriate footwear for the snow. I remember a small girl that was outside her house about 50 meters from the alleyway asking if that man was chasing me. I just ignored her and kept sprinting. I have no idea how close he was to me or if anyone else saw him, but it's been playing on my mind now as I'm older just how badly this could have gone. What if I didn't get the urge to turn around? Would I still be here to this day? The fact that I'm still alive in the same house and the alleyway is visible from the back of the house is still extremely unsettling. I had never been down there since and never will. I take the longer route to get home. I've never told the story to anyone before for some reason, and only in the last few months have I remembered just how bad it actually was or could have been. Always trust your gut instinct. Nearly 2 years ago, my husband and I moved into a pretty safe town. We decided to have some fun while we were young and child-free, so we got an apartment downtown. It was super fun. It's on top of a shopping center with restaurants, boutiques, a theater, and all kinds of stuff. We've had a blast living here and have always felt very safe. I like to go on walks, Since the area is so busy, I've always just walked here when I'm alone. I go on a walk about every other day, unless it's winter. Anyway, for 2 years I've seen this older man sitting in the shopping center. He always gave me this really bad feeling, so if I come upon him I try to divert my path. But I felt bad for judging. Said, maybe I'm just paranoid. Maybe he's just old and lonely and wants to be out around people. Well, the other night there was a shooting in the shopping center. It was at around 8 p.m. at night, and I never go out that late by myself, so I didn't even know about it until the next morning. It turns out the same older man had kidnapped a woman in the shopping center at gunpoint, assaulted her, and tried to drive away with her. Her husband drove after them and shot at the guy. She was rescued and he is in jail. He admitted to the police that he's been stalking that shopping center for victims, watching women around there. I cannot tell you how many times in the past 2 years I've crossed paths with this man. How many times I felt guilty for feeling uncomfortable around him. How many times I was right in his path, an easy target. Always trust your gut, always.